Hey guys, I'm gonna kind of sort of chit chat about what's going on. Try not to take forever, try not to talk too fast. Anyway, so I haven't updated you guys in a while, and I apologize for that. I have done a few videos, I've made a few updates on Facebook, and most of them I just didn't end up uploading because it didn't really feel right. So I just didn't. And I sort of feel bad, but at the same time, since it didn't feel right, I don't. But I do want to let you know what's going on now, give you an update, and kind of tell you where I've been. So, after the chemical pregnancy and miscarriage, it took 59 days. It was a 59-day cycle. On day 60, AF showed. So, it ended up being a really long cycle. The IVF meds kind of kicked in at that point, and I gained some weight. I gained about 10 pounds. I've lost 4.5 of that, almost 5 of that at this point. So I'm trying to work my way back down because that kind of sucks, but it happens, and I expected it to happen. So I'm just happy it wasn't more than that, and I'm happy that some of it's already come off. On cycle day 1, we hadn't really talked too much. We had sort of started talking about, do we want to go for it next cycle, or do we want to wait, or what? And we hadn't really decided when cycle day 1 came along. So at that point, I texted my husband. I went, okay, I have to call the clinic and tell them that it's cycle day 1, but am I telling them that we want to continue with the cycle and I need the protocol, or am I telling them that it's cycle day 1, but we are going to hold off and let me lose more weight and let us eat more healthy for a while and blah, blah, blah. So we ended up deciding to go for it. That was on April 16th. So let's jump into that. I will tell you all of what happened in the cycle and then go from there. On the 17th, we did an antagonistic cycle this time. So on the 17th, we started Follistim 225 and supposed to start Menopur 75 and baby aspirin every day. Unfortunately, for the first 3 days, we totally messed up and gave me 225 of Menopur for the first 3 days. And the 4th night, I caught it and I went, oh my God, it's a really good thing we have an ultrasound tomorrow, because that's crazy, and we've been way over giving me medication at this point, so that's nuts. So on the 20th, I did do the 225 Follistim and 75 Menopur like I was supposed to, and then I went in on the 21st at 9:30 for an ultrasound, and I brought my Ganirelix. So it ended up being a really good thing, actually, that we were way overdosing me with the Menopur, because I wasn't having that good of a response even with all that med. So at that point we had 11 or 12 follicles growing with a leading one on each side and quite a few really small ones. So it was kind of worrisome at that point because the 2 leading follicles were so much bigger than all the other little follicles. So they had me start Ganirelix that morning, which the Ganirelix is supposed to be basically a medication that makes your body able to continue growing the eggs but not ovulate. So I started that in the mornings, and then 225 of Follistim, 225 of Menopur on the 22nd, 23rd, and yeah, I went back on the 23rd, and then they had me continue that for the 24th. The 25th, I took my last dose of Menopur and my Follistim. On the 26th, I took my last dose of aspirin until after retrieval. I took my last dose of Ganirelix, and this is on Saturday, the 26th. Jeremy started his Levaquin, and then at 11:30 p.m. on Saturday the 26th, I took 425 of Follistim and the 10,000 units of Novarel. On Sunday, Jeremy took his last dose of Levaquin, and then after midnight on Sunday, I was not allowed to eat anything. On the 28th was our retrieval date. At 10:30 in the morning, we got 9 eggs, and then we waited for the fertilization report. At the fertilization report on Tuesday, the 29th, we found that they told us that out of the 9 eggs, 1 was over-mature, which we had somewhat expected might happen because we pushed out 1 extra day because all of the follicles, besides the 2 leading ones, were so much smaller. We wanted to see if we could push some of those into mature instead of being under-mature and risk losing 1 egg instead of having, 6 out of the 9 that were just not even mature enough. So that left us with 8. Out of the 8, 4 did not fertilize at all. 4 did fertilize. Out of the 4 that fertilized, 2 were fertilized abnormally. So we really only had 2 to work with. And if you remember my last cycle, our embryos were fragmenting kind of left and right. So that guaranteed us a day 3 transfer. So my protocol after retrieval, I took prednisone once on the 28th. I took prednisone twice a day after that on the 29th, 30th, and the 1st. I took doxycycline once a day on the 29th, 30th, and 1st, and then I started endometrin on the 29th. And the progesterone they had me on 3 times a day, and then I restarted the baby aspirin. On the 1st at 10 o'clock, we had our transfer. We did end up transferring 2 because the quality of the embryos was just not very good. 1 was a 4-cell and 1 was a 5-cell. Here are the embryos. They did end up doing assisted hatching for us. So they did ICSI, and then they did end up doing assisted hatching for us because realistically, I think they just felt really bad that our embryos, for no apparent reason, are not very good quality. And then we waited. We waited till the 12th. I went in yesterday morning to do my beta. And usually I test the trigger out. And I sort of did that, but I kept forgetting to test. So I tested on Saturday, not this past Saturday, but the Saturday before. And the line was still there, but getting lighter. And that was 8 days, 7.5, 8 days after the trigger. And then I tested again, I think on Monday. And the line had gotten lighter. And then I think I tested either on Tuesday or Wednesday morning, and the line got pretty significantly darker, which made me really excited. But then I think that was on Tuesday. And then I tested on Thursday. And Thursday I woke up kind of having lost the feeling that this worked. And when I took the test was stark white. And that's when I really kind of knew that it had passed. I had lost it. That this wasn't going to work this time. So I tried to be positive still, but it wasn't working very well. So at that point, probably on Thursday night, I knew being positive really wasn't going to be something that was working. So I decided to really just shoot for not being negative. So I just kind of was neutral, and that was okay. That was fairly easy, but being positive about it was really hard. On the 12th, yesterday morning, I went in, I took my blood work. She did a really good stick. She doesn't treat me like a total wuss for needing to look away, because with the needles, I need to look away, otherwise I pass out, I throw up, it's awful. And I honestly don't know how to tell you I get through the IVF injections. I just kind of do what I have to do. But whatever. But she did a really good stick. I hardly felt it. She did awesome. And within a couple hours, my beta result was in my email. And I decided to look at it at that point. I knew they would call me, but probably not until 3 or 4. And for one, I needed to take the progesterone if it was positive. But for 2, I really kind of wanted to know for sure on my own time, on my own terms. So I opened the email and there was not even a value because it was less than 5. They didn't even give me a full value because the value was less than 5. So it was definitely negative, and I was to stop the progesterone. And so that's that. The cycle is over. I'm just waiting on AF at this point. I would be lying if I said that it turned out differently than I expected, just because, just knowing what they said about the quality of our embryos, I would have been really surprised if it had worked, especially after the line got darker and then just went stark white. I think I had a lot of hope, and I was treating it like it worked right up until that test went negative, and especially when it started getting darker, I was very, very hopeful. I was treating it like it worked, and then when that negative happened, it just kind of was like, well, that's it. So that's where we're at cycle-wise. It kind of sucks. Well, it really sucks. We don't have any frozen embryos to transfer. So the way our package worked for the financing was that we got 2 frozen embryo transfers and 2 fresh IVF cycles, and we don't have any frozen embryos to transfer. So that leaves us with looking for either trying things to improve my egg quality, because that seems to be what's possibly the issue. The egg quality is not fantastic, which makes the embryo quality really not good. So it leaves us with trying to better my egg quality, which I've been trying to do for the last 6 months. I've been taking a lot of different vitamins to help my egg quality. There's other things you can do. You can do acupuncture. Most acupuncturists want to see you for the first 1 or 2 months every week, and then every other week for the next 6 to 12 months for egg quality. And you also need to take whatever herbs they prescribe you, losing weight, all that, to improve egg quality, or to look for an egg donor. Realistically, financially speaking, I don't think egg donor is in our future. Not only do you pay the egg donor fee, because egg donors make money for donating eggs, unless it is a known donor, but you pay for their medication, and you're paying for their cycle basically, and then on top of that there's donor fees. So financially speaking, I don't think that's in our cards. And then we're also looking at embryo adoption. Embryo adoption, I don't know too much about. I know it's a lot easier if you have a known donor. We have sort of talked about it, but we haven't talked in depth about it, because at the point when we were really talking about it, it was right before transfer, and after transfer, I did not want to think about it not working. I just wanted to assume that it had worked and then take on the rest if it didn't. So we talked about it a little bit, and I think embryo donation is something that we will consider. But, letting go of that hope that you can see the life that you and your husband would create can be hard. And it's not, like I've said before, it's not that we would love a obviously a non-biological child any less than a biological child, but that curiosity of seeing what you and your husband could create together, is hard to imagine that it's not possible. So that's kind of where we're at now. We're talking about the next step, egg donor, embryo adoption, waiting, seeing if we can improve my egg quality. We can get 50% of our money back at this point if we wanted, instead of doing embryo adoption, and then look into flat out adoption. Realistically, I don't think adoption from a birth mother is feasible, because financially that can be very, very expensive. And in terms of people backing out, I think it's far more likely for a birth mother to back out than it would be for, say, an embryo donor, or like an embryo adoption couple, to pull back and say never mind. So I don't know if flat out adoption from a birth mother is really an option. And then there's adopting through the system, but like I've said before, we would really like to have an infant, and finding an infant through the system not only is difficult, but it can take a long time. And infants, from what I have seen and heard, are far more likely to have possible reunification. And when thinking about our family unit already, bringing a child into our home and then having them leave and reunify with their parents could be really, really difficult, not only for my husband and I, but for our kids. For many reasons, for them actually. For them, it would be hard to have a brother or sister or both and have them leave and no longer have that sibling, but also to go through all of the mentalities of it. So, okay, we were in the system, but we didn't go back to our mommy and daddy. We came here and you guys adopted us, but this kid went back to their mommy and daddy, so why did they go back to their mommy and daddy and we didn't? And all of those mental aspects are something that we really have to take into consideration, because they are ours, and I want the best for them in every way. So that's a lot of that stuff is stuff we have to consider now. So it's all kind of crazy and up in the air. Somebody actually did contact me, which is kind of crazy. I think I had mentioned something about either embryo adoption or egg donors on the IVF group on Facebook. And I don't know if she saw it or what, or maybe I mentioned it to her in a personal message, but somebody on Facebook, YouTube, actually did extend a possibility to me and Jeremy about embryo adoption. So that's something to consider, and I think it blew me away, really. For one, just the timing of it, because even if she saw my post, or if I had mentioned talking about that to Jeremy, it wasn't like it was something that I had really talked to anybody about, being on our radar and being something we were really considering. But for somebody to just put that out there and say, hey, we were thinking about embryo adoption and donating embryos and that kind of thing, even just the possibility blows me away. That's amazing of somebody to even think about offering. And I was really kind of blown away and really impressed and touched. And so that's something that we are considering, and I'm not going to mention who it is, because I don't want to put that out there. For one, it's not my business. That aspect is not my business to put out there. But for two, nothing's kind of moving in any direction yet. So I don't want to go too into detail on that. But I just want to mention, God, hate crying, that's incredibly amazing to have anybody consider doing that for you. I hate crying. But anyway, so that's where we're at, talking about the next steps: embryo adoption, egg donor, getting our money back, and trying to adopt an infant through a biomother, or trying to adopt an infant from the system. So that's kind of all the directions that we're considering, and I have no idea how long it's going to take us to decide which way to go. I have a hunch which way we would want to go, but we'll see. So I will talk to you guys later. I'm sorry it's such a long video. I may or may not edit it, but that's what's been going on. So I will talk to you guys later. Bye.